housekeeping items here as we get started. The chat here will be shared with only attendees on the panel. So feel free to add your name, company, LinkedIn, or other contact information in the chat, and it will be shared around with the attendees for those that would like to be able to join and communicate with you after the fact. This is going to be an active Q&A panel here. While we have questions, we invite you to pose other questions to be sent in the chat feature to ask the panelists. As we see common themes or some great questions, we'll reserve those towards the end of the meeting or put them in to the flow as we see fit. Also, if you have other relevant information, things like YouTube, TED Talks, other articles that you have found or seen that you'd like to be able to share, you can be able to use the chat feature and comment those, and people can be able to view them at their discretion after the fact. And outside of that, any other thoughts, takeaways, anything to further conversation, feel free to post that. And we'll be sending out finally a post-panel survey following this. And your feedback is going to be very instrumental in helping shape information for the panels in the future, as well as the International Tourism Resource Network. Without further ado, we have today the Wheels Up First panel around lessons learned from former catastrophic events and how to apply those to boost revenues today. While the industry is certainly starting to navigate and recover from COVID, slowly and steadily as it regains its feet, the industry is seemingly seeking answers as to how to best shape this next phase of tourism. We have seen that it is in our human nature to perpetuate our habits and even have history repeat itself unless we analyze, understand, and adapt our perspective as well as our behaviors from those lessons formerly learned. While the circumstances of COVID are certainly different than former impactful events that have shaped and reshaped the tourism industry, the way forward to create a more resilient and more consumer-driven industry does not have to echo our past. Invited here today are some of the industry's brightest that have been through, adapted, and thrived from multiple formative industry events that have shaped the tourism, travel, and hospitality industry at large. They're here to share their insights, a new and different perspective, illuminate new strategies and techniques in our business to stabilize them and grow them for a stronger, more resilient future. Today, we have joining with us Marcus Shearer of Design Hotels, Thomas Klein of TAC Hospitality, and Kate Burda of Kate Burda & Co. Welcome and good morning.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Marcus Shearer, Senior Vice President of the Americas, is the leader of business innovation at Design Hotels. He is currently responsible for developing a collection of the hotel portfolio, supporting business for all member hotels, and working with the media and other potential partners, as well as expanding and building brand awareness and reach in North and South America. He is leading the global innovation efforts for the organization and introducing new, unique services and experiences for the travel and hospitality industry. Shearer has more than 15 years of experience in global hospitality, where he has held several senior roles in brand, digital, sales, loyalty, and partnership marketing. He holds a Master of Business Administration and a PhD in Innovation Management, and is a regular contributor to industry and innovation publications. Morning and welcome, Marcus.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I wanted to open my camera, but obviously we have technical difficulties, but good to see you all virtually, and thanks for joining on an early morning. Appreciate it. Great to be here.
We also have us joining Marcus Klein. He is an accomplished C-suite executive with an impressive 30-year career that includes advancement into increasing demand leadership roles based on major successes in hospitality, tourism, and wellness-related industries. With a solid history in overseeing multiple unit hotels and resorts, as well as other businesses in both domestic and international markets, he is very much at home growing innovative and culturally driven companies. Most recently in Canyon Ranch, Thomas served as president and COO of this $260 million plus global leader business, driving the healthy living and luxury wellness vacation resorts initiatives. During his tenure, he completely restructured this multifaceted company with destinations in 3 states and Turkey, along with the spa club operations within 22 luxury cruise ships in Nevada. Thomas launched his career upon obtaining a Bachelor of Arts from Boston University. He went to complete his MBA certificate program from Loyola University, and his career was spent in progressive leadership management roles with Ritz-Carlton and Hyatt Resorts, as well as at Sun International Hotels and Resorts in Australia, South Africa, and the US. Also noteworthy, Thomas is an active member in the industry and community, as he has served on multiple boards, associations, societies, councils, foundations, and committees. Currently, he is active with the advisory board and member of the U.S. Travel and Tourism, the secretary and executive board member of the Wellness Tourism Association, and the advisory board member of Cornell Institute in Healthy Futures. In summary, Thomas is a seasoned executive and valued board member and leader who is passionate about creating a sustainable corporate culture. He brings game-changing perspectives to the table due to his multicultural experience in building and transforming brands. We're excited to be able to learn about your experience and have you be an active participant in this panel, Thomas. Good morning.
Morning, Eric. Morning, everybody. A pleasure to be here, and sorry that I'm not able to share my visual screen as Marcus. We are having a few technical difficulties, but I look forward to sharing some ideas with the other panelists, and look forward to the next 45, 50 minutes with everybody. Thanks again.
Last but not least, Kate Burda of Kate Burda & Co. is a consulting firm that focuses on revenue acceleration. They focus on overall revenue strategy to increase profitability. They do this by elevating the level of play within sales, traditional and digital marketing, and revenue management through what they call the revenue trifecta. They're passionate about how they do and think differently to be relevant and differentiated in a very crowded marketplace. They lovingly challenge the status quo and legacy thinking to give way to innovation and revenue growth. Their core customers are investors, owners, brands, and management companies. They have done revenue transformation within the industry to many companies such as Marriott, Lowe's, Goldman Sachs, and other independent boutiques. Kate has been head of revenue within Wright, VP of revenue at CSM, and had been VP of sales at Hyatt Hotels. Her working within hotel industry encompasses 28 plus years. She has led through disposition, bankruptcy, financial downturns, and the shifts within the marketplace. She is currently a member of the International Society of Hotel Consultants and speaks regularly within the Strategic Account Management Association Academy on account-based marketing. She is also on the board of the Boutique and Luxury Lodging Association. We're excited to have your perspective and insight here, Kate. Good morning.
Good morning. Nice to be here.
Thank you. Thank you all. Well, without further ado, why don't we dive right in? I'm going to, while we pose some questions, troubleshoot and see if we're able to enable some of the video capabilities here. Otherwise, we'll revert back to the screen share. In the meantime, why don't we kick things off with the spirit of the panel and looking back on history at some of the former formative events that have shaped and reshaped the travel and tourism industry for consumers, looking at particularly 9/11, 2008, and SARS, and how it has affected the travel and tourism at large. If you were to have looked back and had the hindsight that you can apply today to these, what are some of the lessons and perspectives that the industry should be taking from these instrumental events and applying to this larger COVID pandemic today? Thomas, you care to share a little bit of insight as to
I'd be delighted to. Thank you, Eric. Yeah, look, I think number one, where we are today is unprecedented in times. So while there are learnings, if you take a look at 9/11 disaster, that was certainly an unexpected disaster that impacted certainly North America, but also had global impact. And, consequently, we had to react in the industry. At the time, I was senior vice president with Fairmont Raffles and Swiss Hotels, close to mergers. And a lot of us will remember we had to implement what you would know back then, your PIP programs, your profit improvement programs. And you had to do that relatively quickly because the industry as a whole came to a screeching stop. And we had to rethink, what was our positioning and on a go-forward basis and, how do we preserve business? Some of that certainly applies to what we're doing today. But I think we're having to take a different, longer term view to how we manage that. And if you take a look at before that, the 2008 economic crisis, a little bit different scenario. I think we had some early warning signs, although I think it was late September 2008. I think the 28th or so. The market just crashed. I remember because they were 777 numbers, and the market, that was the biggest move that day. We've seen a lot of different moves, here in this environment. But, the same thing. We had to adjust the way that we were operating business. And I think one thing that is relevant today as it was back then, it really, stems down to pure leadership. Where are the leadership skills? How do we implement those leadership skills? And who's around us to help support the strategy on a go-forward basis from the business, both protecting the consumer as well as the employees and, quite frankly, all stakeholders associated, with the business. There's not one single thing. It as I would say, takes a small village, but the leadership skills have to be ever present. And I know some of Kate and Marcus will jump in here as well. And as we go through this discussion, it's really what are we going to do today to make sure we survive in the future in an environment that's driven by technology, tweets, government involvement, and the fluidity of the crisis that we're currently all in. So what did we learn? I think the bottom line really is that you can take forward leadership skills and how you better define that, and who do you surround yourself with from a talent standpoint to drive the outcome. That, I think, to me, is a common thread throughout all of these crises. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe I can add to this what Tom was just laying out. I think the difference and the fundamental difference is that when we were in this crisis, it was obviously one specific country, one territory, and we were seeing this kind of V-shaped recovery getting out of it, where I think in this case, even we find a vaccine. There's a new normal in travel and hospitality. This is not a recovery over the next couple of months. I think this is a long-term recovery. We will probably be 2022, 2021, if not 2022, until we see a sort of recovery, but at the same time, there will be a new landscape in travel and hospitality. And I think what we learned is we have to be totally flexible. There's a lot of uncertainty ahead, and where we used the past to work on a robust action plan to get out of crisis, I think here there's a lot of factors we just don't know, and we have to stay agile. We have to cut costs. But at the same time, we have to make sure we are innovative. Something you would assume you're doing also in good times. Obviously, be mindful with costs and work on innovation. But I think this crisis reminds us, as Thomas was saying, in really be on our toes and refocus, and also get together as a community. I think something we're doing in this call. Which is obviously important, and it brought us together again and make us focus. And I think this has to go beyond industry as well. I think the difference to to what we have seen with SARS, for instance, which was hitting obviously travel and tourism. This crisis is hitting almost every industry, and we can only get out of this if we collaborate together across industries. I don't think just one industry like airline, hospitality, travel, it cannot solve this. So I think that's the fundamental difference I would point out.
Good morning.
As we get things underway, Kate, additional words?
Yeah, good morning. I have a different take. And of course, in my world, I look at top line revenue. So not to be controversial or to be the disruptor, but we didn't learn. We didn't learn what we needed to from top line revenue. So, post 9/11 and post financial crisis, what we saw was sales and revenue teams becoming more dependent upon OTAs, and we saw them really, the OTAs taking it was just an incredible amount of strengthening within their place within our distribution channels, and that we're still fighting the cost of acquisition that started really in back in 9/11 and was strengthened since. We also saw where revenue teams would drop rates to increase occupancy. And it's kind of known that dropping rates does not create demand. It may shift a couple of occupancy points and 1 or 2 nights, but overall what we see is that we really took a hit on overall RevPAR and RevPAR growth index, and some of those hotels that would take it first, we would call them rogue hotels or breakout hotels that would drop occupancy. In one study we did that I'm actually citing Smith Travel Research, one hotel dropped only 5% in ADR to try to gain occupancy. Within 26 days, 4 of the hotels followed suit and they dropped to a level of 20%. So again, my focus in answering this question is really from our behaviors as far as top line revenue and how do we stop eroding in times of crisis or disruption and so forth. And so where this kind of, if you'd peel the onion and the systemic look back, is we've become some of the sales strategies, marketing strategies, and even some revenue management strategies harken back to kind of the thinking that was actually developed in 1970. And I tell clients, we wouldn't use a phone that was built in the 70s and expect it to have the same efficiencies and effectiveness that we do today. And what's even kind of a little bit more nerve-wracking is we're starting to see those same behaviors and even early on before our hotels open. And so it's really calling for a different level. A different level of how do we connect with customers. And I'll say something even a little bit more striking is I will say, and this may be harsh, but the sales and marketing teams could be the least customer-centric parts of our hotels. And what I mean by that is if you look at their client interaction, or even a marketing campaign, it's all about us, right? It's all about our product. It's all about our pricing, our discounts. It's all about us. And so we joke that, if we were to go out to dinner, it would be a really bad date because it's a very product-centric conversations that we're having with customers. And our customers are becoming more and more at the purchase phase with meeting planners and those that have procurement at the point of transaction, rather than having deeper, higher order business conversations with somebody else and other people within the organization that can shift that business.
Yeah.
So you're believing that you're believing that we're making some of the same mistakes that we did through these formerly that we haven't learned, and we're on a slippery slope. Thomas or Marcus, do you have insights? How do you see things shaping in the marketplace? How should we be adapting, and what does that look like?
Yeah, this is Tom, and I think, Kate, I don't think you're a disruptor at all in stating what you stated, and I happen to actually agree. But I also think, dropping rate, I totally agree with what Kate had mentioned. But I think one of the learnings through that, and certainly in some of the clients and folks that I speak with out there, it is, the top of the discussion is how do you preserve rate integrity as well as the service and the hospitality integrity. It's key on everybody's mind with the incremental costs that are being imposed through CDC and other local guidelines. It's adding incremental costs there. Now, concurrently, you're having to also try to preserve or get new business. And how do you now add value that has a low cost basis to preserve that guest experience? And some of those are really focused in the non-cost area from a service and a hospitality standpoint. How do you relay the safety message, the trust issue, and some of the things we may have time for today to still talk about. So I think you're right. We're certainly making maybe some of the same mistakes, but I think incrementally we've also learned through those journeys. And I fully understand and support the comment on sales and marketing. I think some of the sales and marketing folks, I wouldn't generically use it across the board because there are some fantastic sales folks out there. It's how do you adapt to reality in the global environment, the work environment that we're living in, and how do you preserve and make those relationships stronger by sharing facts and being transparent in what the reality looks like today and potentially in the future. As we said before, this is a very fluid environment, and we're really not sure what tomorrow is going to bring. So transparency, trust, integrity, respect, and building and preserving those relationships from a sales and marketing standpoint is going to be absolutely critical. I think, Kate, you were spot on, and it'd be interesting to see if Marcus has anything to add to that.
You said a great word, Tom, and I think that's trust. People in a crisis, and obviously right now, want to travel with people they trust, and this goes in the B2C world, and this goes in particular in the B2B world. If you have great relationships with agencies and any other buyer, which by the way are in a complete transition period of what they're selling in the future, right, or what they're selling right now. If you have a great relationship, if you have built trust, I think that you're in a great position. Obviously, as a salesperson or any other commercial person, I think COVID-19 is an accelerator for things that worked in the past, and it's an accelerator for things that didn't work in the past. So, two examples. We did our study last year at Design Hotels with the Future Laboratory in London, looking into Travel 2030, which shows a lot around the change of the looking for person. They take much more conscious decisions when they go to a space, more local travel. And we were talking about this for 2025, 2030. COVID-19 is accelerated this moment. When you look at the industry, and there were a couple of things, and a lot of people say, like, when are we getting back to the normal? There's a lot of things happen in our industry in our normal times, which is probably not healthy. Like when you look at the real estate development, when you look at fundings, which really wasn't half thought through. So there's a lot of oversupply. And COVID-19 is an accelerator for this, and will change this. And to Kate's point, on when we look at distribution, when we look at sales, in obviously great times, you're getting a little bit more. Maybe we all, and I'm including myself here, we get a little bit more unfocused. We think we have to do certain things because everyone is doing it. When you look at right now what's happening with the big shows and the trade shows, and there was a lot of things we probably spent money were because we were just feeling it has to happen that way. And probably moving forward, this will radical change, and we will be much more thoughtful. And all of a sudden, you don't have to fly to a meeting somewhere. You can easily do it over a virtual call. So, things we would probably have never tested, and all of a sudden it works. So, that's probably what I think, what we have seen and what we have learned so far from COVID-19.
What other lessons have you guys found from these instrumental and pivotal events in the past that took away, business travel, that took away leisure travel, that reshaped the industry? If we were to look through the looking glass and be able to say, here's what we learned and how do we apply that same methodology to COVID, what else, even though we're just at kind of the onset of COVID and the implications of this are going to be long lasting, what else are you guys envisioning and seeing that will transform the industry beyond some of the things you have addressed as far as being more customer centric and revisiting some of the old, more perhaps traditional ways that we approach things? Can you bring some more light and color to that conversation?
Yeah, I think, and Thomas touched on this in his introductory remarks. It's interesting, the work that's done around VUCA and VUCA leadership, and VUCA standing for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And for those of you that may find that interesting, take a look at it. It was born out of the War College. And I think, as it goes back to Thomas, his point is, how do you lead in a time of such ambiguity and such volatility? And I think we, post some of the other, travel catastrophes, as it were, we started kind of sharpening our knife on how do we lead in a VUCA environment, and how do we become more resilient and focused versus the flurry, and how do we figure out a true north within our organizations or those organizations that we serve and help with when we're not sure, and how do we create momentum in the teams within that trusting and trusting not only of the leader but trusting of the total team. And so I'm looking forward to having more conversations with teams on how do they become more effective in this VUCA environment, in this world of disruption. And we've been pretty lucky in hospitality. Of course, we've, again, from the revenue standpoint, we've had things with the OTAs and other things like SARS and Zika. But we've been pretty protected compared to other industries like healthcare. So I'm looking forward to it, kind of sharpening that knife even further and really getting more effective, our leaders to be more effective in this VUCA environment. So I'm optimistic in that.
Yeah, Tom, and I share what you're saying there, and Kate, and it's quite interesting, because we're all probably reading the similar articles, and everybody is trying to establish best practices in what we're saying is a fluid environment. And interesting, I was on a call, I think it was last week, from Chip Rogers, the CEO for AHLA, and Arnie Sorensen, and the governor of Maryland, Larry Hogan. And, we were talking specifically, obviously, to this topic and how is the hospitality industry going to survive through this, and what do we need to make sure that we survive through it? Well, I think, for me, life's always like glass is half full. So there are some positive things that come out of a tragic environment like this. Look, number one, this is the first time we've ever had such a global situation that is not regionally or nationally, locally, impacted. It touches everybody around the world. And, we talked about the one common thread is, I think I mentioned earlier, and it talks a little bit to what Kate just said, and I've taken notes through all these various readings and listenings, and there were 8 steps that really resonated with me, in the sense of how do you really create that leadership environment, and what are some of the basic core skill sets that one needs to deploy to really navigate through this space. And look, if I could just narrow them down quickly for the 8 points, it would be, leadership, be inspiring. You need to be the voice of inspiration. You need to be resilient in times of uncertainty, when you really don't know what is coming tomorrow, but you live on the facts, and you translate those in a transparent manner, and be aware of the mindset. This is a very, very volatile time that we're all in. A high level of uncertainty, a high level of fears, whether it's jobs, whatever it might be, business. Is my job going to be secure? Is my restaurant going to be open next week? Am I going to go out of business? And be courageous from a leadership standpoint. We have to show courage that we can manage and lead through turbulent times with a very driven and focused purpose. That, hey, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get through this. And showing a high degree of empathy, being not only empathy to the employees and each other, but all of your stakeholders. And clarity and calmness is also a critical baseline. And be action oriented. Don't be afraid to make those decisions, because that's what they're looking for. That's what our colleagues, peers, and subordinates are all looking for, is clear, concise direction. It may not be the right thing, and we may fail with something we've given, but let's fail fast. What do we learn from it? And then move on and embrace the talent around you. No single one of us has the answer, but collectively with the right talent, you can come up and make the right decision and move forward, and don't worry about things we can't control. I think, some of those are really core and can be consistent no matter what environment we're working in, and can be applicable across the industries. And one thing for sure, we will get through this, but the operative word is we.
Yeah.
Thank you. Marcus, I'm going to first pose this towards you. I think it's going to echo a lot of what Thomas just shared, but in looking at more from an operations perspective, how have you guys shifted some of your procedures, practices, strategy? What are some of the things that you've had to be dynamic and agile in to be in response to COVID? And what are some of the things that even in modifying, you've had to continue to change? How can you share some of the ways that Design Hotels has been innovative through this, and how do they relate to what you guys have done in the past?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think what was interesting to see over the last couple of months is that traveler wanted to stay connected with brands and spaces in our hotels. And that's something we have obviously in the last 25 years at Design Hotels put a particular focus on, and really seeing us as cultural hubs, as communities, and really focus on our programming, our experience, how we creating communities in our spaces. And that kind of played out in even times where people were not able to travel, because we clearly saw a lot of feedback response where people wanted to stay connected. And that was a few things where we saw, well, we have much more things to offer than just a room for a night. So when we looked at our member hotels, what they came up with around music, around food, around programming, virtual, there were so many things we came up with, and in stay connected with the traveler while they were not going able to the space. I think moving forward, travelers will take much more conscious decisions once they travel. I think something where we have seen early signs in the last years. It's more about just going into a destination. It's about learning. It's about connecting. It's about giving back, not just taking something out of the trip. So all the things moving forward will be even more important. So we're preparing on when you speak about the operation, in really sharpen this in giving people a reason why they should travel and why they should travel to our spaces, and we think, well, this keeps us positive in the whole. What's happening, what happened in the last month is brutal, but I think moving forward that keeps us positive. And then obviously the pure operational thing come into play, and what does it mean for hygiene and cleanliness and how we're providing a safe space. I think that's obviously has been a focus in our spaces, something we have been very much involved where we were, this was more on the discretion of the individual hotel in the past, where we try to support our member hotels and work on their SOPs and their guidelines. I think one point, what is very important is giving guests control and giving guests options how they want to move in the space. I don't think we're moving into an entire technology world where moving forward every hotel is a completely disconnected human experience, and you're just running around with your application and opening doors and getting something out of the refrigerator. I don't think this will happen. And I think here's the opportunity for independent hotels, and I think the majority of us on the call here is there will be a huge or large human component, something which has made us strong in the past, which will make us strong in the future. But we just have to rethink about how does connection look like? How can we give people choices? How much of this connection they want? And this can be very simple things very manual things where people can have, once they check in, give the options of you want to have housekeeping coming in the room, you want to connect with someone on the space. I don't think each of us has to invest highly in the technology, because I think that's kind of the opposite of what we want moving forward. But obviously the whole operation and making sure that we're providing safe spaces is absolutely critical and something we were focusing a lot.
I couldn't agree more. I think that the new normal is certainly going to be changing. Kate, as you guys are consulting and providing some strategy to be more forward-facing and innovative for your clients, what are some of the recommendations and teachings that you're sharing to be able to allow your clients to adapt through these times? And what should other people be considering as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. There is a lot of focus on how do we take care of the guests as we reopen, as it should. We have to have that trust and that safety and security as they return to our hotels and our inns and boutiques and so forth. What I am seeing is as people. And again, coming from that revenue standpoint, that revenue trifecta, as we're kind of figuring out how that operational landscape environment looks like within travel, what we're concerned about and what we're working with teams on is, rather than waiting for the return, and then we kind of rise up with all of the ships, is how do we reinvent ourselves during the return and during the retreat, how do we reinvent ourselves in preparation for the return? So, a number of folks that I've spoken to, we look at where their strategy was before this hit, and in many cases, it was lacking. And so now we have this, I call it kind of a slow down to speed up. We have this gift, using a poor word to describe this time, but we have this time to retreat, to take a look and say, hey, what should our strategy be? What should we be doing? What conversation should we be having with our clients? Because there is movement going on out there. There are organizations that are looking at how do they restructure, how are they going to work in the new environment. And there's opportunity there. There's opportunity with our clients and our customers, and even some of those higher order business conversations. So for an example, Ford Motor Company at a time really paused operations as far as their making cars. However, they were doing a great deal of work within opening up their value chain to other operations that were involved with PPE, and looking at how does Ford Motor Company start strategically aligning with companies to get kind of the whole environment going. So those are the types of things that that our revenue teams need to be thinking about, need to be talking about. What I like to kind of tell them is, hey, look at, kind of the butterfly effect, right? The chaos theory, where, when a butterfly flaps its wings on one side of the world, it creates a tsunami on the other. And so thinking about what are our clients doing, as operations is doing a fantastic job about thinking about safety and security of our guests. How do we become more relevant to our customers? So when our doors open, or as we start ramping up, we already have those relationships at that level that we're already starting to invest in.
I'd like to dig into that a little further. I think that's a great point. And Hector is commenting along the same vein. To recover faster, can you elaborate on how essential you believe it is, and how do we approach the collaboration between the public and private sectors? Thomas, perhaps you have some great perspective on what you've seen and how this can be done.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think the importance of collaboration cannot be undervalued. I think in this environment, let me just take a small example. If you take a look in San Francisco at the moment, there is an ordinance in front of Mayor London Reed this week relative to standards and guidelines that the hospitality industry needs to implement on a go-forward basis. And the industry is challenging this. It is passed by the Board of Supervisors, and it now needs to be ratified by the mayor. And it's pretty onerous on the operations. And what is happening is you're seeing that the industry at all levels, whether you're the big brand boxes, you're the independents, or any other operator out there, they're getting together with the likes of the San Francisco Hotel Council, the California Hotel Lodging, and also the AHL, which is now actively involved in turning this down. The reason being, the operations, as we've all said, they're not going to come back on at pre-COVID levels. They're going to come on at 20, 30, 40%, maybe if they're lucky. And the incremental standards that have to be implemented, not that I'm disputing the standards relative to hygiene, sanitization, and doing all the right things, but, we still have to be sensitive. How do you manage in this environment and add these incremental costs without any government support? So working with the local agencies and making sure that your voice is heard, and don't just sit back and expect others to fight the battle with you. But there has to be an equilibrium here that will allow our operations to open up and scale business back at a level, and giving our consumers and colleagues a level of confidence that we're going to survive through this. It's a very fine line to walk, granted, and it's a very challenging time to do that. But if this passes, I would venture to say that you won't see many of the hotels opening up, and certainly in the Bay Area for some time, if at all this year. And that has devastating impact on everybody. So it's really, coming up with a workable plan, collaborating with the collaboration has never been as important as it is today. We need the voice of everybody, and we also need to let logic and good business practice prevail in how we reopen. We don't want to reopen and shut down again.
Mm-hmm. Marcus, do you have additional thoughts? How and where can you see that you guys are collaborating within the private and commercial sectors? What are you guys doing, perhaps on a destination level or otherwise, that other organizations should be looking at and considering as well?
I really 100% agree with what Tom was saying, and I said it earlier, is I think collaboration is key, and it has to be across industries, and it has to be between private sector and public sector, something we haven't really looked in the past. And one good example is what we obviously clearly all saw in COVID-19 is the supply chain, which doesn't all of a sudden work, right? So all of a sudden our hotels were lacking on certain things and infrastructure. And I think that what we will see a much bigger discourse between private and public sector moving forward in saying, how can we almost make our neighborhood, our destination, our village, our hotel more self-contained moving forward? Because even we find a vaccine, I was saying it earlier, this will go for a long time. There's probably another thing coming after. This is not a short-term fix. So I think there needs to be a completely rethinking of collaboration, which has been a lot between industry to industry. Now I think it's across industry. It's in the public sector, and in particular when we think about how we're building spaces moving forward. Which almost self-contained, and when we talk about hotels, I think we will see much more hybrid spaces moving forward, where we have as leaders the flexibility to open, to close based on demand, and what happened in the last years, where you saw hotels growing, you saw co-working all of a sudden coming up, and we were talking about co-living. I think this will all kind of blend together, where we will have maybe in spaces, we will have rooms, we will have people who work there for a period of time as the workforce is not going into their offices. We will have people who live there. We will have startups coming in and out, and maybe we'll have even to look at medical, and other things, like when you look at the medical sector, which is they're totally lacking on anything around. I think where hospitality can play a big role. I think hospitality can also play a big role outside the hospitality industry moving forward. When we look at people who work in hospitality right now and maybe don't have their job right now, I think there's opportunities outside the industry moving forward. But I think that we'll see. We'll see the the space changing. We will see the kind of job profiles changing. And obviously, that's why the discourse between private and public is so important.
I think it's a great shift in this conversation, is to be forward-facing and look at some of the opportunities through this. Kate, what are in some final thoughts, and then Marcus, love to hear your perspective, Thomas as well. What are some ways that we can look at the bright side, the silver lining? Where are there opportunities to drive more revenues, to drive a deeper customer experience? What are you seeing as the possibility on the other side of this that the audience should be taking away from this conversation at large?
Yeah, and I actually think it was either Thomas or Marcus that said it, is there was change that was coming, and COVID was sadly that accelerant. And so taking a look at how do we connect with people in a real way that's focused on their initiatives, what they're trying to achieve, and being a part of their solution. And that's sticky. When we can help somebody else to become bigger, better, faster, stronger, or better yet, when we can show up as helping them to become bigger, better, faster, stronger for their customers, we really create a flywheel of trust, credibility, and true partnership versus a vendor purchasing relationship. And I think that's really, at the core of it, that's the hospitality heart. That's why I think many of us chose this chose this space, is how do we serve others to a higher level. And lastly, I think, if things are perplexing, reach out. Sometimes bringing outside in thinking really helps us to have a different point of view, understand things a little bit more globally, and really get an idea of what's going on. I challenge sometimes when folks say, you know what, we're able to do that internally. Well, maybe, but maybe it is. Maybe if you could do it internally, you would already be doing it. So reach out to people because they're here to help.
Thank you. Thomas, final thoughts and ideas about the next wave of hospitality here and what these businesses can implement? Thomas, you might be muted.
You are. I am muted, so you lost my first few words. Sorry about that. Kate said it well, but I think these are really, I think it's easy to belabor the things that are going wrong. Let's pick up the positive side of what's going on and the value of quality of life, the value of family, the value of friendship, a lot of those things, the value of knowing, my gosh, maybe I don't need to be in an office behind my desk 6-7 days a week, 10 hours a day, or whatever it is. Where do we find that balance, and how do we get, then the right people and the right leadership? And I keep defaulting to leadership because a lot of this revolves around that. But what is our clearly defined strategy, and how do you execute that? And knowing that it could change, or it will change, not in a week or two, but it can change in hours. It can certainly change in days. And then stay focused and recognize that we're not living for the day, we're living for the future. And we as an industry, we will get through this. And the communication to our customer base, to our clients, you're going to build loyalty by continually, openly, honestly, transparently communicate with the situation and what you're doing about it to mitigate risk, at a very human, empathetic level. And make sure, as I said before, you surround yourself with the right people in the right heads and actively listen and empower and entrust them to help all of us get through this crisis. We will get through it. No question, we will get through it, whether it's vaccine or a combination of many other things. We will get to the other side of it. How do we manage our business efficiently and make sure we sustain that long-term relationship with our colleagues and our customer base?
I couldn't say it better than you guys have, so I'm going to share some takeaways and insights that I have jotted down from this that I think the listeners on this, if there's anything that you should be taking note of, it should be some of these great little takeaways. I've got 5 here from the panelists, and some of the common themes between all of them have been that collaboration across industries is essential. Now more than ever, it is our shared responsibility to take this time and really be more proactive in shaping the customer experience, our standard operating procedures, and the like. We can do that on a regional level, on a global level, on a government policy level, but it now is the time to be able to reshape that. Secondly, I think Kate said it best in looking at that sales and marketing has been the least customer-oriented discipline, and now we have the chance to really reshape that. This is just one of those components and disciplines, but that we can revisit how and where we are able to shape guest experiences, not just on property, but online. And now is a great time to be able to work on the business and set ourselves up for the future. Third, echoing Thomas's sentiments about leadership and this VUCA environment. I loved what you had to say within these 8 principles. Perhaps I caught a little more than that, but you said embrace the talent around you. How do we be inspiring, resilient? How are we as leaders aware of our mindset and able to show courage, have purpose, and a high degree of empathy? that clarity here is critical, but most importantly, be action-oriented, that we can fail fast and it's okay to do so long as we keep iterating and evolving. I love that, the way that you phrased that, and I think that was very well said. Kate reinforced that by saying, not just waiting for the return, but how are we proactive? How do we reinvent ourselves during this? And how are we able to, Marcus's sentiment, able to give guests control and choice? That's essential to instill consumer confidence and trust. And that we're able to do this in new and perhaps disruptive ways to the industry. Lastly, Marcus shared, we need to explore further ways to be more self-sufficient and sustainable within our hotels, within our environments, within our communities, that outside of just how our supply chain has been disrupted, how else are we able to look at the various disciplines and silos and be able to empower and enable them to be more connected, more integrated, more accountable amongst one another. As leaders, if we're able to take these lessons and apply them in small or large ways to our organizations, if we're able to create that rally cry and get that buy-in from the rest of our team, I have no doubt that we're going to shape a stronger, more resilient business, not only for ourselves, but industry for those around us. To do so, my encouragement is to continue to look at International Tourism Resource Network as being a hub for this type of conversation, to elevate how we collaborate, how we innovate, how we share in some of these best practices and procedures. Next week, we have a panel around employee communication and the power of transparency. Many of the themes, I'm sure, will be surfaced here, and we'll dive deeper into that with some great leaders on July 22nd, same time. My encouragement in the meantime is to be able to connect, as Kate said, reach out, get involved, get informed, be part of the conversation and part of the solution. ITRN is just one possible outlet for this, and we'll continue to have these panels, brainstorming sessions, and innovation think tanks to be able to elevate how, as an industry, we can be more resilient through these times, as well as through when things are promising and prosperous. I want to thank Marcus, Thomas, and Kate for your time today. Some really, really juicy conversations, some great ideas. Thank you for your contribution, not just here, but to the industry at large.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Everyone have a wonderful day. Stay strong, safe, and healthy.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.